Welcome everyone. This is super exciting. It is the last town hall that we'll have for presentations for this round. This is the third one. We had like over 21 presentations, like 17 people or applicants presented, these being the last five. So super exciting. On the agenda today, um, we have like a broad range of projects that will be presenting, all the way from AI generated makeup, all the way to like empowering users to leverage their health data, right? So like it's a broad spectrum, and I think we'll have a lot of fun. I want to keep the format and the structure like 5 minutes for presentations, and then like 5 to 6 minutes for feedback and comments and stuff like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I am looking forward to get started. Let's just wait like 2 more minutes, and we'll get it started. Any questions at all, I guess, before we get started, or anything at all? Sweet. And Darren's here. Welcome, my friend. I think that's it then. I mean, everyone's here. Cool. I don't see why we don't just get started now. Cuddle of Death, you are first. Would you like to present? If you're ready, please take it away.
Well, I don't think we're ever ready, are we? But
I guess
I'm
not.
as ready as I'll ever be.
Exactly.
So, let me go ahead and get the screen share going. Bear with me for one moment.
Cool.
You'll probably see yourselves for a sec. Let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
All right, yay! All right, so, and can you see it like well? Like, is everything all good? Like,
Very
and
well.
like big enough for the screen? Okay, perfect. All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me here today. I hope you're all doing well. Today, I'm going to be presenting my team's idea for our app, which will create exciting new makeup looks to try every day. But before I get into the actual presentation, I'd like to very quickly talk about our team. So let me try to move on here. Whoosh. Okay, so our team has two members on board, Tubbsy and myself, Cuddle of Death. Tupsy is a game developer with Unity experience, a junior web dev, backend dev, and an avid explorer of tech. I make up the other half of the team. I go by Cuddle of Death online, but you can call me Kristen if you'd like. I'm a community lead for Women Build Web 3, which is an organization focused on bringing women and non binary led projects to life. And I'm also a developer DAO member, which is how I heard about this awesome opportunity. And additionally, I'm a technical writer. I have written articles, course material for Women Build Web 3's 30 Days of Web3 Challenge, and complete user-facing documentations for Mint Kudos, which are on-chain soulbound tokens that serve as like proof of knowledge, completion, etc. I'm a Twitter Spaces host who talks about things happening in the Web3 world weekly while covering my own experience as a dev and content creator. And lastly, I'm an avid learner, so I try to learn something new every week. And my ultimate goal is to be able to teach people about the emerging and innovative tech like AI. So let's move on to DailyLook. What is DailyLook? DailyLook is an app that generates on one new makeup look per day. Makeup enthusiasts can challenge themselves to recreate or remix the look by using their favorite products. And just to go a little bit more in depth, we kind of plan to like have maybe like where users can sign up to create an account. They should be able to also view one new look every day, which they'll be able to then use that look as like a source of inspiration, where maybe they have like products already like on hand that are kind of like similar colors to the look that's generated every day, and they want to try their own hand at recreating the look or remixing the look. They'll be able to create an account and post their look for that day of them trying out the new daily look, or if they've made some cool changes of their own, they can showcase it and share it across social media sites like Twitter, just as an example. The deliverables that we're going to be doing if we get accepted, we'll have a website which will of course generate a new AI generated makeup look every 24 hours. Users will be able to create a profile to post and share their looks on the website, and of course, like, we would like to have the sharing to like Twitter, like mentioned earlier. We'll have documentation on how the app works, a Twitter thread on why we decided to create like a makeup app, and how we actually built it, and of course a video presentation of the app. And with future plans, because both of our teammates, myself included, are kind of like in like the junior dev sort of skill level right now, we plan on adding potentially things in the future like trending product lists, like products that our users like to use whenever they're trying to recreate some of these looks. And also, if possible, and after we spend some more time learning, I think it would be really cool to add a tool that creates AI generated makeup tutorials with product recommendations. And with that, we're going to be using Next.js. OpenAI will be used to generate the images every day. I know that this can get like expensive, but it's something that we've been messing with and looking into, so I think we'll be fine. And of course, like Firebase for user authentication and like being able to create accounts. Last but not least, that will actually end off the Daily Look presentation. So thank you so much for listening and for considering our project during this grant round. Good luck to all the other great projects, and I look forward to seeing what y'all are going to be creating.
Awesome. Yeah, for someone who wasn't ready, you seemed very prepared. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. A quick question, why once a day? Like 24 hours a day? Like, I don't know. When I read your proposal, I imagined like they would be able to generate at will a different makeup style using I guess AI generated makeup. That is like images for them to see, for them to actually apply and do as a means of creativity. Why 24 hours though? Like once every 24
So
hours.
with the idea for Daily Look, like with it being like a new look per day, that's kind of like the angle that we're going at for at least like trying to get people to garner interest to check out what AI is capable of. And I know that at least for me, like I'm not like I used to be super hardcore into makeup. I'm not as much anymore, but like there's like makeup enthusiasts out there who are constantly looking for inspiration, and this can include like inspiration for new content, which for them may be a new makeup look, or trying like an influencer's look and recreating it. So uh, they'll be able to essentially go to Daily Look knowing that that is a spot that every single day there's a new source of inspiration. There's something there for them, and they don't have to really rely on like digging around for different things and different like people's looks to go off of whenever it'll be at their fingertips. Now, of course, with future plans, I'm looking at ways that we can bring like more value to users more than just like daily, if that makes sense, like maybe like other tools and stuff.
Exactly.
So I have a question. Did you try this out with Stable Diffusion to see if it works? Because I know that there's makeup websites out there, but I don't know to the extent to which Stable Diffusion out of the box could take your makeup instructions and make an image. Do you have like some tests that you ran to demonstrate this?
Yeah, so like so far we have demonstrated, or not demonstrated, sorry, we've been testing how to actually do this, and it seems like we're going to have to use OpenAI with a slightly like specialized prompt. Of course, like, you know, because you want to generate an actual person's face that has makeup that you can see on it, not like some like messed up, like a full body thing or anything, right? So far, our generations have been coming out with like actual face pictures. Let me see if I can pull one up and just.
So is it like Dolly, is that what you're referring to, or
Yes, Dolly using OpenAI's API.
okay? I just didn't know if you meant prompt engineering using GPT-3.
Oh yeah, no, we've been writing our own like prompts and like whenever the like we can literally generate a new look every single day, or if for some reason like at first if the look is like messed up for any reason, we can actually curate that at the beginning while we're learning on different ways to make the algorithm more accurate. But so far I think it's been pretty good at actually giving us legitimate faces and not like messed up stuff that people wouldn't be able to make.
Oh, I was underneath the impression that what you had in mind was to have a person take a few pictures of themselves, then take those pictures and submit it to Dream Booth to create like a custom model for that specific person, which then you take and then generate different makeup styles for that person.
Yeah, that's something that we're eventually looking to move forward to, but I think due to like the level of like where we're at right now and like learning, then it might take a little bit more time, but that's something that we want to move into, but we're launching with like a more like simplistic ideas so that we can like get off the ground and, you know, get something that people can use like starting like even over the next like couple of days, for example, if we were able to start work.
Okay. Have you tried Stable Diffusion to see if Stable Diffusion's image to image method will do what you want?
We've mainly done our tests on DALL-E. I do have access to Stable Diffusion and like Dream Studio. I can get the API. We'll do some tests on that as well because that could come out with some like better stuff on it. But for now, for our like basic like V0, we were finding that it seemed that Open API worked for that. But I think for moving forward, that we'll have to run a bunch of tests through Stable Diffusion.
Okay.
Hitesh, did you have something? I know you came off mute.
Yeah, I guess this is a different perspective. I wouldn't say I have a ton of experience with makeup or knowledge into makeup, um, but I was wondering about sort of because this will cost, right, to sort of train and generate and so on. Have you thought of like the commercial side of things on how users would pay, users pay, or do you think there's other methods like you mentioned product recommendation? Is there like a sort of a third party way of commercializing this as well? Have you thought about that? Please,
So I've been thinking about it, and it's something that is going to probably, like everything else, like evolve over time. I was thinking that eventually, whenever we get to the point where, like I mentioned earlier, like in the future, we wanted to have something that would be able to generate like an AI, actual like an AI walkthrough tutorial on how to recreate a makeup look or like what type of products might be recommended from that. And I think that through the product recommendations, I don't know if it's through affiliate links or what, because I'm a bit new to this as well. Like I was thinking that maybe we could do that to try to drive some revenue, but I'm also still researching that because this is something that's totally new to me. Open to any ideas, of course.
I would imagine that there'd be a lot of sort of if people are using it and there's a lot of interest in this space. I think cosmetic products would be really interested in seeing how they can plug into this sort of product somehow. Again, I don't know how that would work, but it seems like cosmetic products have the money that they would be willing to like sort of amortize the cost of actually generating the images and cost for the user. So you can possibly let users use it for free while sort of these cosmetic products are sort of generating the revenue for you. I haven't sort of thought through that, but that could be one interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the feedback.
Are you familiar with
Awesome.
loot boxes?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with the loot box model?
Yes, very much so. I am a gamer first and foremost. Oh my goodness. So yes, definitely.
Well, I meant in like retail sales, where a person pays a monthly subscription, and then every week or every month they get in the mail a loot box full of if it's makeup, it'd be different makeup products. If it was, something else. Uh, Anyways, so yeah, if you wanted to have a business model around it, I would say offer loot boxes of makeup, in addition to the app.
That
Interesting.
is actually, yeah, that's super interesting. I am going to write that down and look into that. Because I've definitely gotten some of those like types of boxes in real life before too. So, and people love those things. So, great idea. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. This was awesome. Next we have Swap Neil, which I believe will be extending uh, audit of information propagation. So please, my friend, take it away. On mute.
Thank
Okay,
you.
there we go.
Just change it. Right. Let me share. Let me know if this is visible to everyone.
It is for me.
Cool. Right. So I think this is our third grant application, and I think we've been building a sort of platform to create. I think we went through a process actually. Initially, we had this idea of creating an arbitration reports for understanding how news is spread online. The overarching problem we were trying to solve is like move the discussion past, is this fake news or is this not fake news, because it's very hard in most cases to come up with like this is the objective truth that everyone agrees with, and that's almost certainly not going to be the case going forward with like language models generating so much text out there. It's only going to get worse. So what we did, like the idea that we converged around was like instead of looking at the content itself and only relying on content to create like classifiers that detect fake news, not fake news, stuff like that, why not just audit how this news spreads online? Like spreading is like an activity that takes time, takes like a bunch of people. You can actually audit the history of how a post has been spread online, and you can create open metrics around this spread that you can then use for the same discussion or for any other discussion as like a quantitative source of evidence. So you cannot debate whether or not I actually retweeted a link because it's a binary decision. I either choose to share it or I don't. Of course, there are gray areas around like who controls an account and so on and so forth. But again, like an account spreading a certain article or sharing a certain article is a binary decision. So with that in mind, like what we started working on was like this dashboard, and this is like version 3 of the dashboard that we worked on with the Times in the UK. So what you're looking at is we picked a specific use case. Well, the Times actually picked this use case because they were interested in studying how some articles from two Russian media outlets spread online. Now, the context is there are two outlets called RT and Sputnik Russia Today and Sputnik News, which have historically been labeled as like disinformation, or on Wikipedia they're called unreliable sources, or the US state government like posted a bunch of different documents like around why they think this is being driven by the Russian state. But ignoring all of that, like EU banned them, Meta banned them, whatever, ignoring all of that, like what we try to think about is they're not like, there aren't like complete bozos sitting behind these outlets and sharing fake news. There are smart people who are trying to like push campaigns out or like trying to spread some sort of narratives online. And most of the information, if you go through the websites, it's not like you won't like, it will fool you. Like you won't believe that this is outright lies. You won't believe that this is even hyper partisan in some cases. In fact, a lot of the reporting is quote unquote real news. So again, the point being like no one can sit and be an independent judge of exactly what the news is fake or not fake. But what you can do is audit the spread of these articles. So what we created was a system that does exactly this. So we try to create scores around how this news article spread online, what communities spread it online, who engaged with it, who retweeted it, what are these networks part of. So beyond just engaging with RT and Sputnik articles that we studied, like 8,000 articles in the past year, we mined a lot of Twitter data around these. So someone who shares the article, a bunch of their followers, a bunch of their histories in terms of what else have they tweeted about and what else have their followers tweeted about, And we tried to peg these accounts, like these networks of 80,000 accounts, 300,000 tweets. And then we expanded this because we looked at the history of everyone's posts. We expanded the set of 300,000 tweets with RT and Sputnik URLs to 24 million tweets that were just general that these networks have collectively put out. And we're still working on like an analysis of a large chunk of this 24 million tweets. But with the early results, we created this dashboard with the times that looks at, okay, one is the conventional scores that these sources are given by third-party companies out there that analyze reliability and media bias and stuff like that. Two, we look at a certain language model that was trained on a task of detecting propaganda and news headlines. Again, with the understanding that there is some uncertainty here, there are some false positives here, but given that this was a task that natural language models are trained for, we found it specific enough to at least try and see what this language model is telling us. And then we look at coordination scores, and I'll get to that in a second. So let me walk you through the dashboard a little bit. So this source score is basically third-party scores that these outlets are given in terms of all of the articles that they have shared historically on a certain scale of across multiple different global outlets. So that's the source score. This is the language model I was talking about, which actually picks out spans of text in the content of articles put out. On a per article basis, it tries to pick up like what could be potentially propaganda. And so in this case, there are three instances of propaganda exhibiting two types of propaganda. One is loaded language and one is name calling. So what does loaded language mean? What does name calling mean? What are the parts of speech that actually fall into these categories? That's what we show here. And then there's a bunch of stuff around topic models or like what topics these articles talk about that become more interesting to analyze at the collective level. So there are some topics that feature very prominently. There are spikes around like certain incidents in the Ukraine invasion, Russian invasion of Ukraine that like pick up sometimes, drop off other times, like correlate with on the ground events. So we're still looking at like those things and we're not like completely sure, so we don't want to put that out there. But one of the things we are very sure about is coordinated and authentic behavior. So what is CIB? Well, Facebook and Twitter and a bunch of other organizations started tracking influence operations or information operations online. And they started putting out like networks of accounts that they believe were engaged in either state-backed or independent influence operations online. And so based on the kinds of metrics that they put out, we try to track like how how we think accounts might potentially be engaged in this kind of behavior. And what does this mean? Like, for example, say I look at like a bunch of different accounts in this network that shared one specific article. So this is the specific article: Russia claims Ukraine destroying evidence of US-funded bioweapons program. I don't. Let's assume I don't care about the content of the article. Let's just look at the sharing networks. It turns out that these few accounts in this network have been sharing the same kinds of URLs about a bunch of different times. So Q, Arier, whoever this is, has shared the same URL 42 times with others in this network with an average sharing time of 2.6 seconds between two accounts. Which is like, if I share something and you share it within 5 seconds, maybe you're a very close follower. If that happens 42 different occasions, that seems a bit unlikely to be organic activity. So all we're trying to source is like in these networks, how frequently are these instances happening? Because if it's like 50 times you sharing the same content I share within 3 seconds of me sharing it, that sort of points to known signals of coordinated activity. And so we do this for like the 8,000 different articles in this data set that we collected. And now we picked a very narrow use case, like around Russian disinformation or what potentially could be Russian disinformation and coordinated activity. But we want to scale this out to a bunch of different outlets. And so we reached out to the creator of IFI News. They have some more sort of outlets around like unreliable kind of outlets, independently scored, and this seems to be used quite a bit in the literature. So we want to examine like, is this accurate? Like, do a lot of these outlets like, are they shared by coordinated networks? Do they actually have the same sort of dynamics, or do we find other signals around this? So to sum it all up, like we're trying to create like an arbitration report for these things without really adjudicating whether or not news is fake news. And we believe that that can help the discourse because it serves as an independent way. Like if you want to fact check if you want to check the New York Times tomorrow, you can do that with this kind of system. So it just putting power in the hands of users or crowdsourcing the sort of stuff that goes on around fact checking by third party organizations today.
Awesome.
And
Yeah. Great stuff as always. Anyone have any questions? My question that I had was, how do we know the difference between propagation and virality, right? Like, what is the difference between those two? Because I'm thinking, just something naturally going viral, I'm assuming that it would have that type of behavior. Maybe it wouldn't have, perhaps the content would be different, but I was kind of going off your example of not even looking at the content. Yeah, what are your thoughts? Have you studied that? Have you seen differences between the two? Yeah.
That's an excellent question, and that's actually what we've been working on to sort of give a scientific angle to these metrics. So far, like I said, we've worked on a very biased data set in the sense that we don't have the counterfactual to coordinated behavior. Like most of these posts were coordinated. We don't think they were organically viral, but at some point, there are two questions about it. One question is something that goes viral versus something that is completely artificial in the sense coordinated behavior.
Right.
Two, what often happens in practice is like something that might be coordinated initially ends up going viral. So something that gets pushed onto a network and the network actually spreads it further. Like that's a gray area that we haven't looked at. Like the question is like we need more data around this, and since the whole Musk Twitter saga, like we were very wary of losing access to data, so we started expanding to different platforms as opposed to like overcommitting on one single platform, which is Twitter in this case. So great question. Like we're working on like the scientific evidence for our scores, separating out the viral posts from the coordinated inauthentic behavior. But because I don't have that evidence publicly, like I can't give that to you.
Right.
It's a question that we're actively working on.
Awesome. Sweet.
I actually also had a really quick question. So yeah, obviously, I think it's an awesome product. In terms of like your plans for the platform, like on the one hand, this could be seen as like a public good or something along those lines that you can publish for free. On the other hand, you could also commercialize this like with intelligence agencies, security companies, news organizations, right? So just curious like what your plans are to take this forward.
So I kind of want to step away from the startup bandwagon. Like I feel like these kinds of projects have way more potential as public good services, even though we may like figure out how to diversify revenue streams down the line. I don't like, and I'm answering because like I've been asked by VCs, why don't you just take funding and like create a company around this? One, it's a product that I've built with a bunch of students, and I don't want to go down the commercial route because I know the minute I do that, they won't be able to contribute. Like it'll become a proprietary thing. I'll have to hire full-time people and those kinds of things. So it like I can't just onboard people who want to contribute to it, which I'm able to do right now. Number two, I have a friend who has a nonprofit, and I'm wrapping up my PhD at NYU right now. So I'm trying desperately to apply for grants so that I can stay, work with this nonprofit, build this out in the public space. Number three, we have decent partnerships like coming in the sense that this was one with the Times. They'll continue to at least give us some source of funding to keep this up and like expand. Then we have some organizations in like Latin America who reached out to us that hopefully we'll have a conversation with and build this out for their use cases. Number three, platforms reached out. So some people at Facebook and some people at Google are having ongoing conversations with us around how we can use these as like to work with them to identify like coordinated networks beyond what we would have been able to do externally, because a lot of your access is blocked externally, but if a platform sort of partners with you, that opens up many doors. So for those three reasons, like at least for the next year or 2 years, I want to keep this like a public system. and focus more on like applying this rather than how do I make more money off this.
I'd like to ask you, since I assume you've been reading the Twitter sagas, did you happen to see where Twitter, even though it was ostensibly banning coordinated inauthentic activity, was receiving requests from the State Department to whitelist certain activity, and then we're receiving requests from the FBI to ban other activity, even if it wasn't inauthentic, simply because they found it to be offensive to some narrative that they are trying to push?
There's a lot I have to say. So I should disclose I was an intern at Twitter, so I saw both sides of this picture. In fact, I was an intern in the last summer, so I saw the collabs from both sides. And I also have like friends working in the election integrity partnership at Stanford and other places. So I have a lot of thoughts about this. I can share those on another call. I think this is not the time for it.
Oh, well, I guess also I noticed that the accounts that they were trying to whitelist, were in Arabic. So I noticed that this is all in English. Is there any multilingual ability?
So again, that's the reason we want to create like an expansion to other outlets, because once we can do that, you can, for example, plug in an Arabic outlet and your entire network's discovered are people from basically the local region or the people who spread those things. So that content agnostic like tool works out for us because we can expand to multilingual use cases very easily. But again, it's a question of, can we get the funds for it? Can we get the sort of support, institutional support for it, and figure out the right use case with a civic society organization? Because if you're working on those things, you want to have a partner on the ground who can give you domain specific guidance.
Hitesh, did you have something?
It's okay if we're running out of time.
Okay.
But I think we are, aren't we?
Yeah, this is so good. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. I guess it's a kind of a generalization question. So a lot of the content seems to be like sort of political propaganda, governmental propaganda type of tracking. Because one of the reasons I ask is because a lot of the time these propaganda is not just sort of at a political level; it's sort of domestic issues, gun laws, abortion, whatever. I wonder if there's also like ways to generalize it to broader topics like that, rather than, does it have to be some political topics that you can kind of track, or can we track sort of more domestic issues and stuff?
No, you're absolutely right. We're planning to work on some domestic issues, including like vaccinations and COVID-19. That's one of the grants that are applied for the city.
Perfect, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for presenting. It was a lot of fun. Cool. So our next one that we have is Hari, Health Exchange, which essentially empowers users to utilize their health data in a much better way. Hari, are you there?
Yep.
Awesome.
Is it all right? Share my screen?
Yes, please.
So I'll sort of skip around a little bit, but I'll start with an overview and briefly go over what we've done. All right, can everyone see the screen here?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So my name's Hari. I am the founder of Health Exchange. I have a co-founder named Shri who handles more of the technical side. Our backgrounds are, he's more of a sort of startup coder. He's been in 2 different startups. And my background is more on the pharmaceutical side. So I guess before we hop into what Health Exchange, the platform, does, maybe just like a brief background on like sort of the landscape today. As it relates to drug development and medicine in general. So the way current medicines are generated is sort of like a pseudo-random process, right? So essentially, chemists make a bunch of products, and there have been sort of applications of AI in helping develop these products in like in silico or computational methods. But essentially, a drug is generated, run through like virtual screens. Lead candidates are identified and then synthesized, tested in mice, rats, primates, then humans, eventually go through phase 1, 2, 3 testing, and then get to market. The problem with this is that it's essentially one size fits all. You try to create a drug that affects as many people as possible. But the way human biology works, it's like giving everybody a medium-sized t-shirt, right? Like it'll work for most people, but it doesn't really work for everyone, right? Some people are small, some people are large, etc. And that's probably the best way to explain like how medicine is done today. Now, in the future, ideally, we want to figure out what's going on with the person, like at a basic biological level, and then tailor medication to them. The idea here is that since everyone has a unique biology and everyone's biology works differently, different drugs work differently on each person. That's why one person can make a complete recovery and someone else has side effects, no effects, or in certain cases, adverse events, where it's actually more harmful to give them a given drug. But the question is, how do we get this into market? Like, how do we actually assess someone's biology and really create something meaningful for them? And so I'm going to skip around a little bit here. You can see this becoming more of a problem today because in the beginning, that strategy of trial and error and randomized sort of creation of drugs actually work, right? So for $1 billion in the 50s, you could generate 50 to 60 drugs with $1 billion. Now that number looks like $2 billion for one drug. The reason for that is the diminishing returns, essentially, right? From this randomized process, we've sort of hit the limit of what we can extract. Now, going forward, we need to do some more targeted research, really understand causative effects. And fortunately, we do see some trends that help us do that. And primarily, that's the explosion of health information, both data recorded in an electronic health record, but also genomic data and other types of data that people generate passively on their phones, wearables, things of that nature. And so what we plan to do with Health Exchange is essentially create a system where a patient can upload their data and give us access to that data. And in exchange for that, we could actually compensate them because their data is useful for various downstream applications. Now, on top of that, we could also use this platform, if enough people are there sharing our data, to actually create a platform for early disease detection. So I can get into that for a little bit, and feel free to ping me for sort of all the use cases. But a really quick example of how this data and AI could be used to actually like save lives is, let's say we have a user base of 10,000 people. And we can train an algorithm based on their visitation patterns and their labs or their genomics. We can predict within reasonable certainty whether someone is going to have a heart attack within the next year or two. These risk stratification sort of solutions already exist today. Pharma companies develop them, third-party health technology companies develop them. But one issue they run into is access to data, right? They try to implement in hospitals, but hospitals plenty of times won't want to invest money. But essentially what we've created is like this user registry or repository of data that can, one, be used to develop novel algorithms, but two, on the other side, be a place that can distribute and deploy algorithms and actually have beneficial effects for our users. So for example, a diagnostic telling them that they may be at risk for something to go see a doctor, etc. Now, what we are doing, and let me sort of skip ahead here to this this diagram. What we want to do is create like a tokenomic system to sort of run this thing. The idea is that a person gives us access to their data. In exchange, they get a token that we mint. The amount of tokens are capped. There's more data on how we've designed our system on our white paper, which I can also share. But the rough idea is we're creating, and we are creating a security. We plan to go through the SEC. The idea is that in exchange for someone giving their data, the only options people have today is to donate their data to a government organization or a nonprofit to really make use of that. However, we know that there is a private market for this data. Hospitals currently do sell data on a third-party network. They just anonymize the data before they sell it. The biggest institutions in America are the biggest healthcare institution in America is United Healthcare. They have an organization called Optum, which I think has over 100 million American health records in their repository. Now, this is anonymized. The data isn't complete, right? It isn't matched with wearable data or genomics data. But they do have a data set of 100 million American citizens, but I can pretty much guarantee that 100 million people, or 1 out of 3 Americans, don't know that their data is being used in this way. So what we want to do is create a platform where you can view and use data, but you actually get paid something for it, right? And we think that's fair because in the past, these companies have essentially been value extracted to patients, right? They somehow curate the data or buy it for pennies on the dollar from a hospital system, and then resell it to pharmaceutical and research organizations. And we want to essentially act as a union of some sort to help our users get paid. And we think the best way to do this is to create a for-profit organization and divvy up a portion of the revenue streams that we generate and pass it back. We actually applied for a grant previously at Algovera and won. With that funding, what we've done so far is a couple of things. So the first thing that we did is, or the first thing that we wanted to do was create a free-to-use app where anyone in the United States can sort of just put in some basic details and view all their health records in one place. I think the problem with hospitals and health records is they're sort of fractionated. It's hard to get all this information in one place. Even companies like Optum, for example, struggle with this. That's why they can only view people who have gone to their hospitals. But there are more companies that are working on this aggregation problem that we partnered with. So we actually worked with Part of Health, which is a API company that does this sort of thing, and are working to sort of figure out the back end of this platform. We also designed the front end of it based on some other clinical trial aggregation software that we looked at in the market, and designed a Figma mockup essentially of what we want the product to look like. We also went in and did some sort of research on the regulations involved. So obviously with health data, we have to deal with both HIPAA and GDPR regulations around privacy and revocability of access. And so primarily we've done some mock-ups, worked with vendors to figure out how to actually make this a reality or create the real world. And we're mid-development right now of that free-to-use app, working on the front end, and then working with our API vendors to source the data from our users. So I'll pause there for any questions. I can just, I guess, before I pause, I can just give you a sense of why us or what we're trying to achieve. So we do think one of our edge is in our tokenomics. We're designing it to increase price as the data set grows, right? We want to stay away from creating tokens that have no inherent value. So what we're doing is we're tying our token to the value of the network effect. So, for example, the first people who use our platform, we'll have to give them more tokens because obviously there's less guaranteed value. But as our data grows, our data set grows to, let's say, 10,000 people or 100,000 people, the incremental value of our data will also grow, right? So we want to get pharma and other research organizations sort of involved in our ecosystem, and essentially create real products and solutions. So real diagnostics, real drugs that we end up selling, and then use a portion of those profits to essentially prop up this token ecosystem. So we think the problem that a lot of other projects see is essentially tokens minted. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't represent anything. And the way we want to solve for that is by backing the token with real assets, in this case, revenues from future products and services stemming from this data set. I think the other thing that we have a slight edge in is we actually talk to like data set buyers and biopharma companies. We've talked to some directors acquiring data sets for the express purpose of developing new drugs. And so we have a sense of what they're looking for in these data sets. We are storing this data off-chain, both for regulatory reasons, because we can't actually use IPFS legally, because there's a requirement around physical data sort of firewalling. But we also think this is a slight advantage because we can configure our data set and platform for pharma. And we think that there are enough controls on the securitization side of this to essentially, because we're domiciled in the United States, we think there's enough trust so that we can pull something like this off. And then finally, our end goal is, with all this data that we're getting from users and a point of engagement, maybe one day we won't have to partner with pharma. We can essentially become a user-owned pharmaceutical company, right? Generate our own data and assets, commercialize them on behalf of our users, and then share back some of the revenues. So I'll stop there. Open to any questions, and would love to chat forward, to chat more with anyone who wants to talk to us. Here's our sort of Discord, Twitter, website, and our white paper if anyone's interested.
Awesome. Any quick questions, anyone?
Yeah, so how, at least in Oregon, where I'm located, we have these insurance companies that form coordinated care organizations, and there's like a total cap on compensation for each individual user. So there's a strong incentive for insurance companies to drive. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Because my thing isn't lining up.
No, we hear you.
Okay, so looks like an incentive driven by the fact that the compensation per patient is capped. So they're being incentivized to try to lower the cost of delivery by trying to prevent diseases rather than treat them after the fact. I know that the data that's being collected by hospitals is data collected after the fact, so they can create these pharmaceutical products using that. But I think that perhaps with the insurance companies, if you had some predictive models that were able to predict the illness before it occurs, then they can pass on the savings that they get from not having to treat the disease as it gets worse onto the consumers of the health products or the health insurance products, such as, for example, providing your DNA might let them know in advance that you're going to develop Alzheimer's. They can or they can determine what molecules are going to dock correctly with the myelin sheath that's being covered with plaques or something to this effect, right? So I think that the insurance companies could be a very big consumer of the technology. And then I don't know how this would work with the tokenomics models, but it does work with the economic models of reducing the premium cost for people that share their information. That's kind of how I would perceive it.
Yeah, I think that's so. I think that there's two things to unpack here. So the first is who we do business with, and the second is who we share data with. We actually don't want to essentially ever share data with an insurer, right? Like we don't want to tell them like, hey, this person has this mutation or this person has this wearable or this data that they generate. One, for public perception, we actually they're actually like legal sort of guardrails in place that don't allow insurance to discriminate based on that sort of information, but we don't want to risk that from a public perception angle. So we actually won't be selling directly to insurance companies. But to your point, yes, there is value for these these payer provider type organizations. So they're called like payer provider networks. I think Kaiser is like probably the biggest example of them, but other health systems like Geisinger Health or these like integrated delivery networks where, like you said, essentially you're getting paid per life, right? So like if you're covering a patient, you get paid a set amount, and that's how like that rate is set by negotiations, right, with Medicare or with a hospital system. But based on that, like you pocket any savings. So you're right. Like if you do preventative care and you can more cheaply keep someone healthy, then you increase your margin for the specific value-based care organization. Now, I think in America that is where like it's going to trend over time, where people sort of go at risk for these lives and are responsible for caring for our lives within like an allocated budget. And we do see ourselves like working with these types of companies. So like an example would be, we go to these hospitals and we act as their outsourced population health program, right? So we go to these hospitals, we have like an onboarding setup. People come in, you go in for your visit, and maybe you sign up, using a QR code. You automatically donate your data, you're getting paid to do so. But the hospital has an incentive to put us there, because essentially what we're doing is we're managing their population health for free, right? Like the hospital doesn't have to spend resources engaging patients, telling them to come in, doing risk scores or putting in solutions. We're doing that on behalf of the hospitals and actually driving their pop health program. And in exchange, we get more users, right? So it's like we do plan on like partnerships like that. But in terms of direct data sales, I think just the way we see it, it's like unnecessary risk at the current state. But we've definitely thought about partnering with those types of.
I'm gonna have to stop it there. Unfortunately, maybe we can connect outside. I know, Jeez, you had something to say, but Hari, he actually mentioned it in the chat. If you could link, yeah, exactly. That'd be awesome. Love what you're doing. I just want to be respectful of everybody else's time so that we can all present. Great. So the next one that we have is Jaswant, which I believe is using. Yep. Are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please, my friend, take it away.
Yeah, it was so overwhelming. Yeah. Can you see the time here? It's 12:30. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just give me a minute. Where are you? Shit. Yep, sorry. So yeah, like the problem like I'm presenting right now is like complete pure research what I'm currently thinking of. Like we saw all these LLM models which can actually one shot or zero shot on almost any of the NLP task. But I still think there is a problem like to do with like a lot of other languages. So what I'm currently thinking of is to replicate the same thing with smaller models, but only one task, and which we will be able to train it in one language, and it should be able to run in on like almost many other languages. And if possible, I would like to perform it in one shot, like where we just give an example in one language, and it should be able to perform it in like other languages too, on like similar tasks. So that's what I'm like thinking of doing this. So as you know, like we saw, like we already know these multilingual embeddings, right? Where like when we see the NMT machine translation models, which translate one language to other language, which doesn't use English as its intermediary language, they tend to project those similar words into similar like same space. So same thing happens with sentence level embeddings also, which is kind of similar to laser. So I'm trying to use this property to perform this task. So basically you can see this is M2M model, which is a translation model developed by Facebook, and like you can get the encoded values of a single sentence, and now these are the like these are the shapes of the final layer. So so each word is a 1024, and like these are the number of tokens, and this is the number of like batch, and we can use span and year. Like you must have seen the span and year. The problem, like you already, I think you already saw that multi embed can actually perform in other languages too. But one issue I can think of is like token irregularity, where, for example, let's say a single word like a single word in English can be of multiple words in other languages. So sequence to sequence NER can't work in this time. So I'm thinking of applying this span and year where it will work on the span level and year, like span level. So like it will take spans, it will create like possible spans, and it will try to predict the entity of that span. So it will resolve the issue because assuming the whole embedding of the that entity will be similar, same, like irrespective of like when how many tokens it has. So I have a small demo. Let me just show it to you. It's just like where is V1. So I'm running an embedding model on my collab, and I'm just using ngrok to get the embeddings here. Okay. I hope you can see, like, sorry about the UI. I mean, I really suck at this. So let's say this is my sentence and I'm trying to create an data. I added it. So let's say I clicked on a train. Now the training is done using sentence level embeddings. Now, like we just given single example, and it's able to predict helicopter. And if you see in other language, so let's say English to French, yeah, like that's what I'm trying to achieve. This same like task. So for just from single sentence in a single single language, it's able to predict in like. So we can even write like and yeah, like see, it's not exactly doing it on word level. So let's say I even wrote like, we might be thinking like it's doing on word level, just maybe embedding search, and it might be easy. But so let's give another example where like I gave it as a other word and I added it and I trained it. Now you can see like it's not just embedding search, it's actually like learning from different so we can actually simulate this in a different context with single word. So it's not exactly just embedding search, and we can replicate the same thing in multiple languages to around like 100 languages, depends upon what embeddings we're using. So yeah, I mean that's it from my side. I mean this is like kind of simple demo. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Awesome. Anyone have any questions for Jaswant? Sweet. Thank you, Jaswant, for presenting. And it's about 2:01. We have our final presenter. Darren, are you there? I believe your project is Impact for AI or AI for Impact.
Yes, sir. And I'm here. And yeah,
awesome.
My presentation should be pretty quick, so I'll be happy to share it. Let me try to share my screen.
Take your time.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Sweet. So yeah, my project is basically AI for impact. I'm calling it Myseelia, and yeah, the idea is basically to cultivate symbiotic relationships between people and projects and organizations to cultivate collective action in service of a flourishing future for ourselves, communities, and planet. And so the key, one of the key pieces of technology that we're working with is a shared knowledge graph that people can contribute to with relevant data and information and knowledge concerning impact and regeneration. And the idea is that we're going to apply AI to this graph database to gain insights about all kinds of things related to regeneration, and to offer valuable services such as like recommendations, recruitment, and like matchmaking, and inference, and just any kind of valuable services that we can come up with to help people in their making an impact. So yeah, the problem is, of course, that there's a lot of crises going on, especially ecological, economic, and they're just way too complex for any individual to disentangle. And so we're really lacking a kind of a whole systems map for bottoms-up collaboration at global scale. And so the idea is that there's a lot of data out there, a lot of relevant data for creating collective intelligence and impact, but it's very siloed, it's not standardized, it's not accessible, interoperable. So this is one of our tasks, is to just kind of integrate a lot of the data that's already out there, and to help people to just build their own kind of personal perspective of their wants, their needs, their goals, and projects that they're working on or interested in pursuing, and then kind of integrating these diverse perspectives into a kind of a global map, which would be manifested in this shared graph database, which would then be the kind of substrate to apply machine reasoning and machine learning on top of to gain insights. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing that there's kind of a convergence of trends in tools that are necessary to do this, as well as the kind of social will. So we think that this is a kind of the right time to be doing something like this. And yeah, the idea is that through this process, we can basically integrate data into information, into knowledge, and into wise action by integrating these various data silos into a semantic graph database that we can use AI on top of. And so this gives you an idea of kind of where we're starting at by just focusing on people and organizations. And the idea is that we want to offer people the ability to create a profile for themselves, which they can use to specify their interests, their location, their offers and needs. And we can basically integrate these profiles to offer recommendations to people, like, maybe they have certain skills that an organization is looking for. And so we can offer, recruitment, we can suggest, jobs to people. We can we can cluster people based on their location, and we can, suggest, connections for people based on their areas of interest related to impact. And so, yeah, we're going to be offering the ability, to for people to do search. So that's a piece of it, is we want to basically provide like a search engine for impact, as well as other services like recommendations. And yeah, another kind of way of looking at this is kind of helping people to find their niche in this ecosystem of impact and regeneration. So it's like giving people the power to pursue their goals and dreams, to do what they want to do, but in alignment with what the world needs. And so yeah, just again, like kind of starting out with individuals and organizations by allowing them to create profiles, because that's kind of just a place to start that makes a lot of sense. But we do plan on expanding beyond that to, be including, a lot of other, types of entities and, topics. And so this is just kind of the first stage, is just, giving people the ability to create their own self-sovereign profile, and then kind of integrating them together to be able to allow them to, explore the landscape, basically kind of like a map. And this just gives you an idea of kind of the initial architecture. At the beginning, we're planning on doing this in a pretty centralized way by just, running our own server, our own, algorithms and processing and APIs. But in the long run, we would like to kind of decentralize, all of this and have it be really like a public good and a commons that, no one has to trust us in order to make this work. And so it's, the core team is myself and someone who I've been working with, Jennifer. And I have experience in traditional software development, and I come from the Web3 world. I've been working on community currencies and token engineering. And that is it. So happy to take any questions or comments.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with RDF or Sparkle, like semantic database systems? And then and then part two of the question is, are you familiar with like code generation? So like the ability to generate SQL queries or Sparkle queries from natural language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not so familiar with the second part of it, but that sounds really interesting. I mean, we are basically looking at like RDF and Sparkle and using the semantic web standards to do this, because they are standards and because they do offer a lot of rich capabilities in terms of like semantic searching, and so we are looking at that.
So like for a test data set, you might want to look at Wikipedia. I think they have some RDF data that you can use. And then with regards to the text to code generation, well, I guess what I'm saying is that you can use like GPT-3 Instruct, for example, to automatically create these SQL or Sparkle queries to either insert or retrieve data from the database from like a given set of text, like plain text, because making RDFs is
right. Okay. I see what you're saying. So like kind of having just like a database of the queries and then matching them to like to text input.
No, I guess what I'm saying is like you could take a Wikipedia page, give it to GPT Instruct and say, generate an RDF from this plain text.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
Or then say, generate a Sparkle query that will let me find a list of all presidents of the United States from this year to this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that would be really useful.
There's a project that reminds me of yours, Eden Protocol. I know them pretty well. They seem to be working. You guys have similar vibes. It's definitely similar goals as well. Perhaps a little difference, some differences in terms of how you guys are getting there. Both are thinking about, okay, how can we connect, individuals to be able to get the value that they need through knowledge graphs. I think I will get you two in contact. I don't know if you've heard of them yet, but could definitely, you could add value to them, or they could add value to you, or there could be a collab in some way, shape, or form, or even just a good conversation. So I'll get you guys in touch.
Please, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anyone? Sweet. Thank you, Darren, for presenting. It was awesome. That is pretty much it. I'll just do a final community update, essentially, we're in the voting phase right now, so we have until the 23rd, inclusive of the 23rd, to vote on the projects that you think that should get grant funding this round. And that's it. This will be uploaded on YouTube for all to be able to see. And yeah, I may do like a Twitter thread to shout you guys out to as well and your projects. That's all I got. Anyone have any final questions at all? Awesome. Well, I've had a blast, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Sweet. Peace.